Reb Meir etzem shmo Reb Noirai. Reb Meir's name was Reb Noirai. Ala flugas nirisoy shibenelem v'oimek. He was shining. Noirai means shining in the Loshen Targum, in the Loshen of Aramaic. So we know Aramaic is the Achoraim of Loshen HaKodesh. That's why the things that we don't want the Malachi Ashoros to understand, we say in Aramaic, which means that the language is not worked out according to Loshen HaKodesh, where every vibration is reflecting something real that's immediately sensed. But it's a veil behind. Aramaic is like the Chitzonius. You can still work your way back to Loshen HaKodesh. Sometimes we even find words in the Torah that are Aramaic, like a machze, where the Torah calls a nevi a machze. So the Zohar says that's a lower level of nevuah. A mare is how you call it in Loshen HaKodesh, and a machze is how you call it in Aramaic. Like the Zohar says the Loshen tochazi, come and see. So that's the Loshen of machze. So we see that by Bilam, he says asher machze shaka yechze, noifel igli anoim. So he uses that Loshen. So always the Aramaic talks about the deeper sides, the achoraim of the Kedusha, the things that are behind the scenes of reality, of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. So the word Reb Noirai speaks about the nelam and the oimek, the depth of light. So they called him Reb Meir, Shemeir ein chacham balocha, but not Noirai. He can't teach them as far as he goes. אבל הסוף דעתו, שהסוף שנקרא תרוסוי, the chelik of his Torah that's called Terasa, which means that it's individual to his neshama, that is Reb Meir's neshama, v'anelam sheniglu lo yomik b'yoyser v'le'omdi olav chaverov, shu'lemalim madrigosem v'l'hiri aneim boi. They couldn't come to the depth of his understanding, and therefore they didn't call him Reb Noirai. They only called him Reb Meir because he was able from his place to shine into them so they can understand at their level. The Reb Meir beyichud rimer motza v'gomer b'pimei da'acher. Like we mentioned, that Reb Meir's Rebbe was Elisha ben Avihu, was Acher, and Chazal didn't want people to learn from him because he was yoytze letarbus ro. What does it mean, tarbus ro? Tarbus ro means somebody goes out to a bad culture. He goes to live in a bad culture. How do you define a bad culture? A bad culture is a culture where if everybody were to behave the way that Acher did, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't be good. So therefore, it's a tarbus ro. It's a culture that's bad. It's a culture that doesn't work. So because Acher was yotzer tarbus ro, he said mitzad achach, mitzad his realizations of what he saw, he realized that to overcome evil is too much of a fight, and he didn't think it was worth his time. So therefore, the Chachamim couldn't learn from him, because everything he says will be based on his perspective of understanding of what life is, and it's wrong. Somehow it must be wrong, because it's not mechuven to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had intended. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intention is that we should create a culture that works for everybody. So therefore, they called him Acher, but Rebbe Meir Rimmer Matzah. We're going with Pimad Acher. So Reb Tzodok says this works out with what we just told you about Reb Meir. Shekifima dergose l'tayr hasheretz, because he was such a deep thinker, he was able to understand the depth of good that's within this world. Ein chilig min tzadik l'roshav ein kamokim l'harich. So mitzad Reb Meir, he could learn from anything and everything. As long as it exists, he can learn from it, because he's able to turn everything back to good. And therefore, even Acher's evil didn't register with him. He was able to interpret even that the proper way. That Reb Meir had a Talmud that was able to be metayed the sheretz with 150 timim. And so he's saying, what does it mean, the sheretz? Which sheretz are we talking about? Sheretz is the general tumah, the general fact that we can become tumah, the general fact that we have, in reality, things that are evil, things that are no good. So this Talmud was able to explain the goodness of it in a way that it would become Torah. The tumah is called sheretz. The general tumah is called sheretz, which means that something creates impurity, something creates a reality that is not kosher, that is not digestible for the human being. But Reb Meir's Talmud had the ability, So when they talk about Asheretz, Rotzeloi Letar Kol Resha, to cleanse the world of evil. That means Letaris Asheretz. To be able to explain everything that's Tomei, what's the purpose of it in its origin, and that makes it Torah. Dugmas Hashem Yisborach Shemetayr. K'meshamri B'Shili Yuma, we say, Ma mikveh metaris atmayim, af HaKadosh Baruch Hu metaris Yisrael. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by his very nature, by the way that he is Metayr Klal Yisrael. So automatically, every moment we go through in time, something is happening, whether we're aware of it or not, that's actually cleansing the world of evil. We're closer this moment than we were the moment before, and the moment later again. That's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence itself, which is everywhere, is Metayr Tamaim. It's Metayr everything that's wrong with this world. It's cleansing it and bringing it back to its perfect state. Like Rabbi Akiva says, Ashreichem Yisrael. Lifnei mi atem metaharin, imi metayr eschem. So he's saying, Lifnei mi. Mi is the madrega of Binah. Mi is the level of understanding when you understand who you are. That's called mi. Mi is who. Who am I? Lifnei mi atem metaharin. You're cleansing yourself in front of that me, right? You're cleansing the who. You're identifying yourself appropriately. Imi metayr eschem. It's that same me that's cleansing you. The same one that's looking for himself is the one that's cleansing himself. Lifnei mi atem metaharin, imi metayr eschem. And who is that mi? Avichem shebashamayim. It's the very nature with which he created you that is looking for the truth, and it's the very nature with which he created you that is cleansing you. They're both the same. It's intrinsically so. So the one that wants to get out of pain, the one that wants to realize the truth and find his home, is the same one that's doing the cleansing. He's looking for himself, and eventually when he finds himself, he creates a yichud of kitchav richish chintay. When a person actually can find the source root of his manifestation, when you can go back to being ayin, when you can go back to the nothingness that the Mekabalim call atika kadisha, right? The seichel hanela mikol rayon, when a person goes back to the seichel that is nela mikol rayon, it's empty of any ideas, it's beyond perception, it's just pure seichel. So then he unites with the source. He unites with the one that's metayrim. And who is that? Avichem shebashamayim. So that's why Rebbe Akiva is saying our tradition is actually uniting the one that's cleaning with the one that's being cleaned. And that's both the me. The me is the one you're identifying as self inside of you. The who that you think you are, that's what's cleansing you, and that's before who you're being cleansed. So that's the Avichem Shebashamayim, that he's metayr all the shrotzim. So when a person goes into that level, so he also can become like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is metayr Tamayim. So this Talmud was able to be metayr Tamayim. By recognizing the unity that Chazal are referring to when they call him by the name HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's Arizal, so we cannot speak about Tumah. Like we mentioned many times that in Atzilus there is no Tumah. Like the pasuk says, Lo yegur chara, that evil cannot scare HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or they can't live with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he is the one that made everything. And as soon as it comes to his presence, as soon as something is exposed to his light, then it becomes pure good. It identifies itself as what it really is, which is good, which is a force for good. So everything in creation is that way. The only way that something looks bad is when it's taken out of place, when it's taken away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's taken away from the Achdus. In the world of Pirud, different koiches, different people, different malochim, which are forces of nature, can get into each other's way and cause harm to each other. And this is how evil manifests in the first place. So by taking everything back to the Achdus, he was able to be metayr the sheretz. This Talmud was such a high level that there was no room for Tumah as far as he was concerned. That Shlomo HaMelech built a mikveh to wash for the Kahanim in the Beis HaMikdash, He built it with 150 mikvois that he built over there, that the number 150 has a specific significance, and everything Shlomo HaMelech built in the Beis HaMikdash was built based on a specific cheshbon of how this relates to the human experience, and how do these cheshbonis and these symbols identify for a person what he needs to do in order to gain Ashras HaShechina, in order to open up all the knots that are tying him down to things that are lower than his level, so he can bound back to be the formless being that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created within him. So this is going to get into later. So the Talmud was saying 150 tamim. Each time is against the mikveh in the Yam Shel Shloimeh, which was built against this chachma of how to be metayar everything that's tumah. V'Ravina bikesh l'taris kol sheretz min adin, she madreges tzimtze v'agvil v'nidchu devarav. They didn't pass like Ravina. Ki be'emes min adin tomei. The midas adin is the one that represents that there is evil, and as long as there is midas adin, the evil must remain in place, because otherwise people will get hurt. If we remove midas adin, if we remove tomei, if we remove the understanding of evil from a person that still has an midas adin, he might end up hurting other people and himself. So therefore, they didn't pass like Ravina, because the time is not ready for that understanding. So every level of humanity, as they grow, as they become more conscious, the Torah can allow them to manifest their reality based on the halachas that are suitable for their level. And this is we see that throughout history. As Klal Yisrael was in the Zman Beis HaMikdash, then the halachas were minimal, because it was the neshama of the thing that was alive. It was the actual connection that they had to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through their avodah that was the main connection. And later, the learning became the main connection. Like Chazal teaches that we have to say the words of the carbon, and that's considered for us bimkom carbon. And the same thing, all the different avodas, when we speak about them, when we learn about them, this is instead of the avodah that they did in the Beis HaMikdash. So our learning in the Shalom Farm Sfaseinu, our learning is instead of the actual avodah that they used to do. So this is how history evolves to suit each generation according to its level. As the levels are higher, the understandings are higher, the sichlias are higher, and the ability for damage become lower, and the Torah can take on its real understanding, it can take on its true depth. As we go down the ladder and people are more physical, they're more material, and they're fighting over the goods, everybody wants to get a bigger portion. So then the halachas have to come into that reality and create the dinim that will hold order, that will allow people to coexist without getting into creating pain, which is what always happens when we compete for the same resources. So the Torah's way allows for each person according to their level. But the halacha, when we paskin the halacha, Chazal paskin the halacha according to the generation. So it's not just a truth that's always true. It's a truth that's true for those people, and each generation is like that. Each generation has a truth that's true for those people. This was the level of sophistication that the law, the din, the midas adin needed to take on in order to deal with these people, in order to deal with these neshamas. So every generation gets their own dose, it gets their own interpretation, gets their own understanding. And it's up to the leaders to really be able to have the sensitivity to know what the Torah needs to say to these people. Because there's something different that needs to be said to each person that's going to light up his neshama, that's going to make him understand what's being spoken about. Like Chazal teaches that a person should always learn b'makom sheli bo chofetz, in the place where his heart desires. Because it's the heart that we're talking to. So if you want the heart to listen, it needs to be suitable. The message needs to be suited to the one that's listening, to the one that's receiving it. So when the heart has a desire to understand a certain area in the Torah, that's the time when the letters will sink in and create realities inside that heart. And this is the goal. The reason we learn Torah is because we all have the power of nevuah inside of us. We all have the ability to manifest from the spiritual reality. And by us all getting on the same page and trying to manifest the same reality, we will be able to do it. Because just the same way we did our current reality, the same way we manifested this reality out of nowhere, we can manifest a completely different reality out of what Chazal actually prescribed for us, what the Torah prescribes for us. And that's based on our nature. It's based on how we were really designed by the one who created us. So if we can function, or sort of function, on broken software, on broken nevuah, on broken programming, Kolshkin v'kal v'chomer, that if we have the right understanding, if we have the right words, and said in the right way, and understood in the right way, in the way that the heart actually wants to receive it and wants to accept it, kal v'chomer, that we will be able to manifest the reality that will be l'shem l'tiferes. This is what the Torah is trying to teach us how to do. But at the time of Chazal, people were very, very, very far from being able to keep up with this type of thinking, because the neshamas in the beginning were very, very separate. Evil lived in evil bodies, and good and kindness lived in good bodies. There was very little confusion between the two. It's like people that lived at the time, they were completely devoted to one side of the coin or the other. They were completely devoted to the good of humanity, to help humanity, to build humanity, or they were completely devoted to their own selfish causes, and they didn't care about anything. So at that time, even if the wisdom were to be available to everyone, the hearts were not ready to be kind. The hearts were not ready to be good. So there were people that weren't allowed to know the truth, that it needed to be hidden from. Mashenken today, the Arizal says that all the neshamas have been mixed, and they've been combined and separated and recombined in so many different formulations and so many different combinations, that today every neshama is a mix of good and evil. It's not this guy is good and this guy is evil. We all want to do good, and we all happen to do a lot of evil because of our misunderstanding. So the way for people like us to find the truth is different than the way the people back then had to find the truth. Today, the more we allow people to see the kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more we allow people to see the kindness of creation and the world, it heals them. It helps them feel better, and it allows them to manifest a better reality for themselves. In the past, the more we showed the kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more we allowed people to connect to that kindness, they felt that it was a free ticket for them to be evil. They needed to be scared, they needed to be held back, because there were drives in them that were uncontrollable, that were beyond the control of the words that we're using in order to control them. So today, after all this suffering, after thousands of years of galus, when a person recognizes that the Creator is kind, he feels relief. He feels like he can now live, he can now be, he can now do whatever it is that he thinks HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants him to do, because he has the reassurance that the one that put him here, the one that created him, the one that brought him out of nothing and nowhere, has his best interest in mind. So this gives him fuel, it gives him energy. And that's why the Torah HaNistar was done in such a way. So the Torah HaNigla doesn't really get into the details of how powerful a human being is, how powerful a nefesh is, a ruach and a neshama, what it really means, what you can really control, and how you can manifest. Adarabah, it tells you what to do, and it doesn't allow you to contemplate beyond that level. But the Torah HaNistar is all about how big you are, how powerful you are, the different powers that that a human being has, the different abilities for manifestation, and the map of consciousness for a person to understand what is possible with the equipment and the spiritual entity that's already inside of him. And this is what Chazal called Shir Koima. Shir Koima is to understand the full span of consciousness. And the full span of consciousness is built exactly in the tzura of a human being. That's what it means, B'tzalmeinu Kidneseinu, that we were created, our body was manifested in such a form that we can read from our body, Mipsori Echze Elokah, to identify all the different possibilities of consciousness. Because our consciousness was colored and segregated by our body. How is this so? Because when we're born, our consciousness is a united consciousness. It doesn't identify itself as anything specific. It doesn't even have the ability to do so. It doesn't have a language to do so. Now, in order to gain understanding of itself, it's going to use its senses in order to make sense of the world outside and to identify as the self that it is. So every sense that's being used within consciousness, within the spirit, is developing that possibility of manifestation within the spirit. So if a person is blind, he never develops the ability to see, which means that his spirit has never seen, which means that the potential for vision in that spirit is dormant, is asleep. It never came out lepoil, so he's not aware of what that means. He's never had that experience. Mashenkin, a person who can see, as soon as he sees, his spirit learns about seeing. And now, all the different interactions that happen within the spirit that relate to the world of vision have been activated. And the same goes for the other senses when he's listening to words. So different words will take him to different areas of the spirit. And this is how he can explore his spirit and discover his spirit and recognize who he is. So all the different elements within the spirit were developed by the body through its relationship to the body. Without that, the spirit would be a united unit, a oneness that cannot be divided or understood or perceived with any terminology. It's just existence itself. So from that existence grew all the different potential options for the brain through using the senses and identifying and analyzing the data that's coming in through the senses. And that causes spiritual movement. That causes spiritual development. That causes a person to identify who he is and what he is and how he is. And this is how he can interact with the world. He can interact with himself. So all these different manifestations are interacting with each other in order to create a person's experience. And this is done by his imagination. So his imagination, by taking in all the information from the senses, taking in all the different types of data, it tries to assume what is the condition of the person at that time and what does it need to do next. And all this is done simultaneously. Every time we have a thought, it means that our imagination concluded, based on all the data, that this is what needs to happen. And this is basically running our entire life. This is who we are at this point, even though we're the conscious mind, but we're going along for the ride that our imagination is taking us on. Our imagination, based on the information that's been inputted, is deciding what comes next. And that's the koyach of nevuah that's within a person, that based on the input, he creates output. And he manifests based on words, based on concepts. So on the individual level, that type of nevuah is a person thinking this, I'm going to do this, and then he manifests this. That's a type of nevuah. And on the collective level, the Nevi'im were able to go into the collective mind and actually make decisions, kiviyochol, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of what's going to happen in the world, in the big unit, in the Adam HaGodel. Every person is Olam Koten. But the Olam HaGodel, the big one, only Nevi'im had access to fully. We all have access to a certain degree. But the full access where they can actually identify what's the Olam HaGodel and what's the Olam HaKoten, what's me and what's the collective, was how the Nevi'im were able to create nevuahs that once there was a commitment, once HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a shvuah, it means that this will happen. Because like it says, Lo yish'el v'yanochem. It's not like an individual where an individual can make a nevuah, can make a prophecy, could say, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and then he decides, you know what, I don't want to do it. Or he forgot, or he lost interest, or whatever else happened. This is by an individual. But by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, once it's written into the collective that this is what's going to happen, it will happen. Because his decisions never get broken. He doesn't have any external forces. He doesn't have anything outside of him or bigger than him or beyond him that could stop him from manifesting. And therefore, when the Nevi'im would go into that place and create a reality, that reality would stick for eternity. So the Chachma of the Avos was to be able to create a reality in such a way within the collective to create Am Yisrael, to create a nation that's going to have a special protection because this is the destiny of the world. This is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to manifest life. That there's going to be a specific family designated before that is going to go through tremendous suffering, unbelievable suffering, suffering that cannot be imagined, cannot be described, cannot be even contemplated because it's beyond. Even on the individual level, some individuals went through suffering that we can't contemplate. Koshkin, when you talk about Klal Yisrael as a whole, tremendous, tremendous suffering, because that's the price for the Midas Hadin in order for us to get out early, in order for us to be able to realize our reality before everybody else, in order for us to recognize that there's a way that we can manifest life as a people that can avoid pain. There will be that there won't be a single person crying. To recognize that possibility, we gave thousands of years of pain and suffering. That was the price that needed to be paid, and the others accepted that price, like we see when Avraham Avinu had the first nevuah where HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised to him, and he asked, "Bama eda kirashenu, how will I know?" So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "Yadoi teda kiger yizaracho." That nevuah manifested the pain that came in Mitzrayim, and from that came all the pain that came after, because Mitzrayim was the mother of all the Goliaths, was the beginning that allowed Klal Yisrael to fall to such a madrega that they couldn't get out of it afterwards. The slave mentality stuck to them. Like they say, you could take the Eden out of Mitzrayim, you can't take Mitzrayim out of the Eden. Mitzrayim is still in the Eden up until this very day. They still haven't noticed that the destiny is in their hands. Their behavior is causing their reality. Their thoughts, their understanding, their imagination is manifesting this reality based on nevuah. And when they'll change the nevuah, the reality will change. When you record different messages within the human machine will give you different results, different experiences, different realities. All is available to all. It's just a matter of understanding how to do the programming. How do you change? How do you shift a person that's ingrained himself in a certain system of reward and punishment, and a certain system of when his brain gives him the good chemicals and when the brain gives him the bad chemicals, to be able to rewire and restructure. And this relates a lot to neuroscience. The scientists are busy with this area, which is very, very promising, because this is the area that religion has been busy with for thousands of years. So when scientists finally arrive to have the tools to be able to measure what's going on in the human brain, this will help us tremendously to be able to combine science with religion, because they really are one. It's just two ways of studying the same beast, the same being, the same reality, the same nature. We're studying the same thing, just from a different lens. So when they'll come together, then everybody will understand what's real in religion and what's made up in it. Which part of it was just the fluff that got added over thousands of years. But it's not the real thing, because the real thing is just what's real. The real thing is, how do you create within a human being a reality that actually works for him according to his very nature? How do you say things to him without confusing him about who he is? And this is not as easy as it sounds. Everything you say to a person affects how he thinks about himself, affects the me, the lifnei mi atem mitaharim. Who are we talking about? So every movement, every word, every vision, every sound, every smell affects that experience, affects your imagination of who do you think you are and what do you think is supposed to happen next. And when these settings change inside of us, our physical experience changes. Our body was already pre-programmed that the nervous system will cause the experience internally. It will cause the sensations that you have within your very own body, the sensations that you have when you eat, the taste. Everything has different abilities of manifestation, as we can see by ourselves, that when we were children, we appreciated different tastes, we liked different foods, the taste felt different. Maybe we could eat more, maybe we could eat less, but it was a whole different experience. And still the same body. And that's because the mind has the ability to program all these things. So this is why the Torah tells us always that when we will have peace, then you will eat and you'll be satiated. It sounds simple, but it's not as simple as we think. When a person is stressed, when a person is not in a proper mindset, he can eat and eat and eat, and he just doesn't feel that relaxing feeling that should come after. The body is just not ready to give it, because the brain is preoccupied with a billion other things. But these things are just tiny little tastes of what's possible when a society as a whole, when a community, when people together are actually trying to create a better world. Because we've never experienced that. All we can experience is us ourselves trying to make ourselves better. And that alone could give you a lot of progress. That alone could change your experience from one end, from one end to the other. But that tells you nothing about what's possible when people actually go at it together as a group, which is going to happen when Mashiach comes, when everybody, all the nations, all over the globe, are going to come together in order to crown HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol, in order to recognize the truth of what's been happening this entire time while we were sleeping, while we were living our lives but not really knowing what it means. We were alive, but we weren't really awake. We weren't really present. We weren't really noticing that this is it. This is our life. There's nothing else. This is whatever we make of it is what it is. And this possibility is here now. It's just our ability to take this opportunity and to actually use it for what it can do and actually recognize it for what it is. We don't have access to that yet. And this is why we daven and we learn and we constantly are working on our spiritual self, because he's capable of waking up. He's capable of recognizing the truth of what's happening. We have it in us. We have that potential within us. And we have to find a way to wake him up, to call him into action, to recognize what's true. This is what was always called in the Svarim Essense. Essense doesn't just mean that your emotions are waking up. Essense means that the one dwelling within is waking up. A recognition, a realization is taking place that this is my life. This is it. This is the time HaKadosh Baruch Hu designated for me to be active, to be able to do, to manifest, to change, to create. And I can do with it whatever I please. There's no limitations on what I can do with these manifestations. And every manifestation is going to have consequences. Because it's real, because it's live. So this goes for either direction, but the evil consequences are going to disappear in time, and the positive consequences are going to continue for eternity. So whatever we can do positive, whatever we can do to help, whatever we can do to build, whatever we can do to make people feel at home in this place so that they can be what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created them to be, we're bringing life closer to the solution. We're removing a little bit of the problem, because the problem is only in our minds, is only in our perception. Reality is not a problem, but our understanding of it could be a very big problem. And our reaction to it can become real problems for ourselves and also for other people. So these people that we're talking about here, Reb Meir, his Talmidim, they were beyond what we can understand and contemplate. They were able to take everything back to its source root. They were able to see life from that perspective. So Reb Tzodok is saying that even though they didn't paskin like Ravina, because the Midas Adin is still active, we still have the Midas Adin within us, and therefore we still need these halachas, we need the concept of tumah, we need to keep people in the place that they are. There are 150 different tastes that you can get from being matid sheretz to hu lete'ameu asher chayim anitzchim shel hasoges achdus yizbarach hapshute gamach b'ri Yisrael lo mezochu. So what does it mean te'ameu chayim zochu? That somebody can get a taste of Shabbos, he can get a taste of the perception that's going to come. Once we recognize the yichud, chayim zochu, then he gets life. What life does he get? He gets the recognition that everything is good. That's life. As long as there's a possibility of evil, it's not life. That's called the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. That sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. That's not life. That's conditional. But the unconditional good can only be recognized by somebody who is zeichet to te'ima of me'en olam abov, te'ameu chaim zachu, that he tastes what's about to come after, when Mashiach will come, after in the Yom Shekila Shabbos. V'inyan divrei Rav Hina ki nochash v'sheretz hem shnei roshei atumis, shelo sirtzach v'lo sinaf, shem roshim l'chol ha'averes midas k'yidua. So Rav Hina was talking about a nochash and a sheretz. He's saying a nochash and a sheretz are the two types of tumah that are found in the world, and these are called the tumahs of the right and the tumahs of the left. The tumah of the right is the klipa of lo sinaf, which means that somebody has too much chesed. He's trying to do good to himself, even on account of somebody else, and this is the klipa of Yishmael. And then there is the tumah of lo sirtzach, which is a tumah of Yishmael, of Esav. Esav is the midah of Edom. Of Edom, he got the bracha from Yitzchak al char b'chotichya, that he has the midah of Ritzicha within him. So these are the two sides, these are the two possibilities of manifesting evil. Shem roshim l'chol averis midas rois k'idiyah. V'yedua, the Ritzicha enem midas Yisrael. K'ma shenema v'agevoinim lo'im Yisrael, that Klal Yisrael doesn't have Ritzicha in it. Klal Yisrael doesn't have the energy that's required to harm another individual. It's not within their nature. So even though we can find, Chaz v'sholem, a person that's afflicted with that nature, that's because he bought it from the Umay Su'olam. But our nation was created that we should be Rahmanim Bashanim and Goyim Lechasodim, which means that we have no inclination to hurt another person. Therefore, a Metzoide, who is, Metzoide comes for somebody who speaks Lashon Hara, which is a type of Ritzicha, right? It says that somebody causes somebody else pain, or it causes redness to come to his face, a type of Ritzicha. So a Metzoide goes out Chutz L'machne Yisrael, which means that this midah that he used has no shaykhs to Klal Yisrael. It doesn't belong as part of the Klal. Mashen ken Tava, sheneg the tum ziva. Ziva is a tum of Tava. Ein mishtalech l'machne Yisrael. You don't send them out chutz l'machne Yisrael. Shezeh shaykh v'shchiach b'Yisrael. That this type of a problem does happen in Klal Yisrael, does belong to Klal Yisrael. V'abeheta shelo yesh tuma. Arizal b'vamole. So even when a person does, when a person has cheshek, when a person has taiva, and he does it b'tahara, so it's very complicated for a person to find the right track so that he doesn't get he doesn't get hurt, that nothing gets hurt while this is taking place. Because of the way society looks at it and the way we ourselves believe in it, it's a very complicated area. And therefore, this is still something that needs to be mevurer even in Klal Yisrael, the issue of Lesinov. Mashenken, the problems of Lesirtzach, this is something that doesn't belong to Klal Yisrael Bichlal. So therefore, it's called Nochosh and Sheretz. Nochosh is the concept of Lesirtzach, which caused humanity to have Moves after the Chet through the Nochosh. And the Sheretz shows Kol Minei Tumah, that a person has impurity. So we'll see next week how he continues over here, because we ran out of time. So we'll talk about this a little further. The Nochosh and the Sheretz, which is the left and the right of the Klippa. So we should all be zoicha that all these different klippos should stay far away from us, because Baruch Hu should send us his light through the Gula Shlema, Mer B'Yameinu.